Welcome to an Epiphany with Tiffany. My name is Tiffany, and in this episode, we're going to talk about blessings versus curses. Every single one of us should have heard the phrase, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. We're often told this when we're younger because somebody did something mean or said something mean. It's used as a way to comfort people. However, I've come to realize just how harmful this cliche actually is. Because words do hurt. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to give you some background on this topic today. A couple of weeks ago, I went to church and the pastor was talking about Romans 16. In this passage, it starts off with Paul greeting all of his fellow believers that are in Rome at the time. And if you're like me, sometimes you see all these biblical names and you go, why? Why do I have to read all these names? I'll be honest, I've skipped over some of these types of passages in the past. But it was definitely a God moment that we went over this passage when we did. In the verses, there's a whole bunch of names that I'm not going to read because I will definitely butcher them. So if you want to read it yourself, go ahead. It's Romans chapter 16. The pastor was talking about how we greet people and when we greet them and when to greet them. Greeting someone is a way that we can show that we love them. We also dignify people when we greet them. Our pastor started talking about how at the end of this chapter, Paul gives a benediction or a blessing. In fact, the definition of benediction is the utterance or bestowing of a blessing, especially at the end of a religious service. Paul ended this letter to the Romans, or he was ending the letter to the Romans, and so he wanted to bless them. As our pastor went on to talk about this passage, he mentioned how some of us may not curse, like as in use cuss words, because we don't use that type of language, but we can still curse someone with the words that we use. So, like if we judge somebody or we say something negative towards them or we say something mean, we're speaking whatever that is over their life. And so the same thing can be said when we're blessing them or we're speaking positively to them. And so I sat there in church and it just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. I am somebody who has had many, many, many different people in my life on both of those spectrums. And the point that the pastor was making just resonated with me. So I've had, people who have spoken life to me, and then I've had ones who have honestly spoken death into my life. And not death in like the physical sense, but like death in the spiritual sense. So it just hit me how important words are to people. And he went on to share a story about his young kids. And he's, was telling us that he has told them in the past things like, oh my gosh, you whine so much, or you're such a whiner. Or, something along those lines about whining and them acting childish. And of course, they're young kids. But the whole point was that, of course, they're acting this way. He was speaking these words over them. So basically, he was saying, you're a whiner, therefore his kids are living up to that expectation that he had of them. Yeah, I know. Insert mind blown emoji here. Like, I'm so mind blown, I can't even say the words correctly. It just was like, what? So I honestly just sat there for a few minutes in church and just kept thinking, what? Are you serious? Whoa, just different things like that. And it was definitely like a dagger to the heart. Because I've been a victim of this kind of talk, but I will be honest, I've also been a perpetrator of it. Things like either people have said these things to me or I've even said them about other people, like you're not good enough or you can never do this or you're never going to do that. Blah, 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 blah. Like all this crap, right? that I've either been told or I've said about other people. So these words have caused me personally to not walk the path that I know that I need to walk, because I've allowed the enemy to turn these things into a foothold that he keeps in my life. And as I've thought about these things that I've said to other people or about people, I've just continued to have these wait a minute moments, or epiphanies. And so it's just kind of like, well, no wonder that they're stuck in this perpetual cycle of always meeting my expectations or not meeting my expectations because of how I'm viewing a said situation, or how they're viewing it because of what somebody has said to them. I hope that makes sense. So here's an example. I actually had this person in my life for 7 years, and they did a lot of damage, a lot of emotional damage. And there are things that I still hear in the back of my mind that this person has said to me. And, you know, those words became who I grew into. They became part of my existence. They affected me and they played a major role in decisions that I made in my life. Whether that wasn't stepping out into faith because, I was like, ha ha ha, God, yeah, no, I'm just gonna sit over here and what else? Because I'm not good enough to do that. Like those kinds of things, because I was scared of what this person said to me and said about me. So the pastor went on to talk about Genesis 1:28 and how humanity started with a blessing. God blessed Adam and Eve and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it." So God spoke life over Adam and Eve. Proverbs 18:21 also talks about how death and life are the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat of its fruit. Meaning we speak life into people or we speak death into people by the power of our words. And it's obviously, like I said, not physical death, but it can be emotional and it can be spiritual death. James 3:9-10 also says, "How with the tongue we can bless the Lord and Father, and with it curse people who are made in God's likeness. Blessings and cursings come out of the same mouth. My brothers and sisters, these things should not be this way." So if you ever had somebody say something to you and you just have this moment where you're like, no, I'm totally going to prove you wrong. Or, or you have this moment of, oh my gosh, they're so right. So just think on those both those moments and those different feelings that kind of well up when somebody says something like you're not worth it, or you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, whatever it is. We have options when somebody speaks to us. If they speak negatively, we have the option to internalize that or not. And when we internalize it, this can lead to the cycles that we all find ourselves in, the cycles of sin, the things that still get us. We can struggle to renew our minds or step out in faith because of these things that others have said, and frankly, that we've repeated to ourselves. So it's really mind blowing to me to kind of sit here and reflect on all of this and reflect on the different blessings that I personally have denied myself because I was too entrapped in the curses that somebody spoke over me. And I've felt really emotional in the last few weeks, but I've been trying to turn that over to God. I've been confessing it and asking that it won't be true in my life anymore. That I stop living in the cursed death of negative things that have happened and have been said to me and spoken over me. I want to start to live in the blessings that God has given me. I really hope this has encouraged you, maybe even convicted you like it did to me. We need to be more cognizant of the words that we say and the words that we use. It doesn't matter who the person is, whether it's a loved one or somebody we don't even know. We need to be cautious and cognizant of the things we say. So we finished our church service by singing the blessing song, which I'm going to read the lyrics to you. The Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you, and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you, and to give you peace. May his favor be upon you 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his presence go before you, and behind you, and beside you, all around you, and within you. He is with you. He is with you in the morning, in the evening, in your coming and in your going, in your weeping and in your rejoicing. He is for you. He is for you. I hope you have found something useful from this episode today, and remember to speak life. I'll see you on the next episode. Have a blessed day.